We are in open session, Mr. President.
Mr. Witness, before the break, you were telling us of your personal circumstances in 2012, just prior to the time when you made your statement, and that you were in financial difficulties with out work and a family, of course, to support. And you've told us how number one approached you and took you to meet number three for your discussion. And you've told us also of your expectations, your hopes of advantages that would come to you by way of you making an acceptable statement to the prosecution. And you told us that those advantages included income and education for your children, relocation to another country, and the opportunity for you to start again and support your family. Now, my question is this. From the time that you met the prosecution, what advantages, if any, did you receive? What did they do for you? Remember, we're in public session. If you want to go into private, you can better ask, but just don't mention like where you went or anything like that. So, for example, were you relocated? Don't tell us where. Were you relocated?
Baada ya kukutana katika hii hoteli hiyo nikaitwa.
After the meeting at that hotel, after we met at that hotel, I was called up to go to location number 4 for purposes of relocation.
Sorry, Your Honours, I didn't want to interrupt my learned friend's question, but just a comment on line 10 of this page. My learned friend says that the witness said he was in financial difficulties without work and with a family to support. I don't believe the witness said that. The witness said he was a trader, he was a businessman. So that is, of course, an inference my learned friend makes. It didn't come from the witness.
All right, Mr. Witness, just to ask you this, so you can clarify. At the time that you went to see the prosecution, were you in financial difficulties or not?
Ndio sababu nilipotoka kwa nchi ambaye tumetaja pale nyuma sikukuwa na.
Yes, I did. When I left the country to the location I've just mentioned, I did not have any money. And when I went back, I took ill.
Yes, well, I thought that was clear. Thank you for further clarifying the situation. And my question, to revert to it, was this. So you go to the prosecution, you provide the kind of statement you hope they'd like, and you did that in the hope of getting some advantages. And you've told us about what your hopes were that those advantages would be. So can I ask you this? What did you get out of it? Did you get your children's education at any time paid for? Did you get any income yourself? Did you get financial support or rental support? Did you get relocation for you or your family? Just very briefly, and we're in public session, just very briefly, can you just outline what advantages you got?
Kuna pesa nilipewa wakati huo nilienda.
I received some money when I went to location number 4. Subsequently, I was given some money for the school fees of my children. But thereafter, I did some personal introspection. I checked my own conscience, and I came to the decision that I wanted to withdraw from this case.
And can you remember when that, when you decided to withdraw because of your conscience? When was that? You remember? We're now, obviously, September 2014. You made your statement just 2 years ago, just under 2 years ago. How long were you, as it were, working with the prosecution, or with the prosecution? Can you remember?
One second, witness. Mr. Hooper, which one is it? Your first question was when it was that his conscience got the better of him, according to him. Is it the same question as how long he worked with the prosecution?
Yes, thank you, Your Honour. Let me be very specific, more specific. When did you withdraw from the case? Can you remember?
Sehemu ambayo roho yangu ilianza kukataa ni wakati
I decided to discontinue cooperation because after I was relocated, my children began to encounter some problems and I was no longer being given any money. So I decided to discontinue because I did not get what I had expected. That is the reason for which I decided to withdraw. And although I continued to maintain contact with those people, they sent me very little money.
I've been provided a document relating to... Well, let me ask you a further question.
When he said those people, let's verify whom he meant by those people, because there have been a number of people that he may have met. So we are clear on the record there. He said he continued to maintain contact with, quote-unquote, those people.
All right. You heard His Honour's question. When you say you continued to maintain contact with, quote, those people, unquote, who are you referring to?
namaanisha ofisi ya mashtaka. Sijui ni section gani lakini ilikuwa.
I'm referring to the office of the prosecutor. I don't know the specific section or unit of that office, but it is the section which is in charge of relocating people like myself.
Right. Now, I have a document that purports to show expenditure by the prosecution on you, and it shows a total of $2,647. That doesn't mean it was money pressed into your hand, of course, but just the money or the cost of your position with them. Now, how much money did you get? For example, did they pay you monthly or what? When they were paying you, before they stopped paying you, how much were you getting? Can you remember?
Ndio walinipa lakini
Yes, I received some money, but I did not add up the amounts to be able to give you a total amount that I received from them. In any event, they gave me money to meet my needs, all my needs.
And how?
In fact, for my daily expenditures or livelihood. Correction from the Swahili interpreter.
And is it right or not that you were relocated together with all your family, your wife and the number of children that we know?
You can answer yes or no to that question, but do not tell us where you were relocated to.
Bwana Rais.
Witness, Mr. President.
Ungenisaidia tuende private session alafu tuongee. Tafadhali.
There are a number of things that I cannot speak about openly, so I would like us to go into private session so that I can express myself freely.
All right, we will go into private session for you to answer that question.
We are in open session, Mr. President.
Can I just say that the document I referred to, just for the record, discussed yesterday and admitted, was KNOTP 0141 0026. Mr. Witness, we've heard and understood what you say you were doing during the time of violence in and around Turbo. Can you nevertheless confirm that there was no Kikuyu person killed in Turbo during the post-election violence? Is that correct?
Sikusikia wala sikuona. Lakini kwa uwezo ya
I did not hear any mention of that. I did not see any such occurrence. So to the best of my knowledge, the answer is no.
To your knowledge, in or around Turbo, did you ever see, witness or hear of Kalenjin youths, warriors, being armed with guns or having guns?
Sikuona sababu wakati huo nimesema nilikuwa kwa
I did not see anything of that nature with my own eyes, because at that time I was in a secure location. I had not left that location, and at that time I did not have that information.
I'm sorry, we had an overlap there, so we'll come back to your answer, Mr. Witness. I think Mr. Catwell just wanted to...
Mr. Catwell, again, you were saying something?
Mr. President, the question that my colleague had asked was whether guns were used. And the question that was put to the witness was whether weapons, because the word that the translator used is silaha, which means weapons, as opposed to bunduki, which means guns. And probably if that could be clarified to the witness, the answer would be more responsive.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Catwell. Sorry, there's an interpretation difficulty apparently. So let me ask the question again in a clear, more specific way. During the period of the post-election violence, let me start my question again. Did you ever hear that Kalenjin warriors were armed with guns, such as AK-47s, or any other sort of gun?
Sikuwahi sikia sababu.
No, I never heard any such thing. I did not hear that. You see, I was at the secure location, which I already mentioned. I did not hear mention of it.
You told us you occasionally listened to the radio, both before and during after this period of violence. My question is this. Did you ever hear Mr. Ruto say anything bad on the radio?
Ile kitu nilisikia tu kwa Bwana Ruto ni
The only thing I heard Mr. Ruto say was in relation to the ongoing campaign. He spoke on the radio asking people to vote for him. I didn't hear him say anything else.
Thank you. Now, coming back to your statement, I'm just going to go through a few parts of it, and that would be let me take you to the very end of your statement. You've got it in front of you, and I'm looking at and want to refer you to paragraph 129.
Paragraph 129 is shown to the witness.
Thank you, Ms. Tumai. Now, I'm going to read it and then ask you a question about it. Quote, paragraph 129. During my interview, I was consulting on occasion with my notebook and some sheets which contain handwritten notes I had taken in the past. I do not agree to provide a copy of this notebook to the investigators, as it also contains private information that I'm not willing to disclose, unquote. Now, we have, of course, seen notes that were taken or made during the interview. I'm not asking you about those. Those are by way of reference, so that we're clear. Let me show you what I'm not asking you about, okay? I'm not asking you about the documents that appear in Your Honour's tab 6, which is a prosecution bundle, which begins KenyaMOJA.com 00870058. And if we can just have that, that's Annex 5. If we can just flash that up for you, Mr. Witness, so you're not too confused about what we are looking at. So if we can have KenyaMOJA.com 00870058, Annex 5, put up on the witness's screen.
The document is presented to the witness.
Thank you very much. Hasn't come up for us yet. I've only got the statement. I've only got his. Here we go. There you go. So you remember, Mr. Witness, it's several pages of things, and.
Mr. Cooper, I want to understand how the system works. Court officers, do we have one central? Let's go into private session for this discussion, please.
We are in open session, Mr. President.
All right, so, Mr. Witness, we're going back to paragraph 129. So, during my interview, I was consulting on occasion with my notebook and some sheets which contain handwritten notes I'd taken in the past. I don't agree to provide a copy of the notebook. It contains private information I'm not willing to disclose, unquote. Now, what was this notebook, and what were you consulting in it? And where did that information come from? Can you help us?
Hii notebook nilikuwa nayo.
I had that notebook with me, and as I have already told you, some of my secret information was contained in it, information that had no bearing on this case. It is for that reason that I did not want to give away this notebook, because it contained some of my personal information as well as other information that I had taken down with person number 3. Unfortunately, I have lost that notebook. Otherwise, I would have been willing to hand it over to the court. Unfortunately, I lost it.
All right, so you've got, I understand you had private matters in your notebook and you didn't want to share those with people. I understand that, but I'm very interested in the other information that you'd written down with person number 3. What kind of information was that? Can you remember? Generally or specifically, can you remember?
Sikumbuki mzuri.
I do not remember very well, but I do recall that it had some diagrams. We had drawn some diagrams in it, sketches. From the Swahili booth, could the witness be advised to repeat his answer, because there was some interference and the Swahili booth did not get his answer clearly?
Mr. Witness, we had a bad connection just then, so we didn't quite hear what you said. Can you repeat the answer you've just given as best as you can?
Nasema kulikuwa na sketch map.
This is what I was saying. The notebook contained some diagrams. And information about person number 12, as well as other information which I have now forgotten. The notebook also contained other information, but as I have already told the court, I lost the notebook. That notebook had some personal information which I did not want to disclose.
And sorry, Your Honours, I don't know if this will be important, but before the interpretation kicked in, I heard the witness say in English, sketch map, which was translated as diagram. I don't know whether that might be of some significance.
I had the same concern in mind. Witness, did you use the expression sketch map as part of what you had in the notebook?
Samahani, ningesema
I'm sorry. These were diagrams that were drawn for me.
I know. What I'm saying is the last time you gave that answer, I wanted to know whether you had used the expression sketch map. You can say yes or no.
Mr. President, niko na ugumu ya kuelewa.
Mr. President, I do not know how to distinguish between a sketch map and a diagram. I don't know if the question could be clarified.
No, nobody is saying you've done anything right or wrong, or that you used the wrong words. We just want to know whether you had used that expression. That's all, and then we move on. Sketch map.
Kwa mfano nilitumia hiyo mchoro hiyo nilikuwa nimechora.
I used the example of the diagram which I drew myself to show something to the investigators who had interviewed me.
We'll leave it at that, Mr. Ruto, take over.
All right. Now, your interview, we know, was over 4 days, and adding up all the time spent, there may have been breaks, of course, though the lunch breaks are accounted for, so it still comes to just under 24 hours of questions and answers that led eventually to the composition of this statement. So 24 hours. Now, during that time, as I understand it, you were able to go to your notebook. Is that right? And refer to it, to the diagrams or other information that you'd got from number 3. Is that right?
Hiyo notebook ilikuwa kwa sehemu mbili. Kuna mambo nilikuwa nimeandika kabla hata.
That notebook contained, in some parts, information on the 1992 war. And that was in the notebook. Now, in the statement given at number 4, location number 4, there was some information in the notebook which I used. And then there was also some information in the notebook, such as the diagrams, which were incorrect. And in my head, in my mind, I was able to memorize the information that I received from number 1 and number 3. That notebook also contains some private and personal information. Now, even if that notebook were here today, such private and personal information would be irrelevant to the case. But you also agree with me that you may have some private information in your notebook which you do not want to share with anybody. So that was personal or private information that would be totally useless for the court.
Yeah, I understand that. Don't worry. Nothing wrong with that. You've got personal stuff in the notebook. That's private. I understand your position. It's not what my question's about, but you've answered it. Did the investigators ever make a copy of that notebook or part of it? Did they look at it themselves, to your knowledge? Or was it just you who was looking at it, as I understand you to say?
Your Honours, there's 2 or 3 different questions there. I wonder if that could be simplified.
This notebook of yours, you were allowed to look at it from time to time. You didn't agree, we can see that, to give it to the investigators. So would I be right in saying that the investigators didn't look at your notebook?
Unajua wakati
Answer. You know, I don't know whether they took a look at it, but I did not hand it over to them. When I went out to eat, I left the notebook where we were having the interview, but I told them that I was not going to give them the notebook. It is clearly stated in my statement that I indicated that I was not going to give them the notebook because it contained private information. So we had agreed on that point. Now, as to whether they looked at it or they looked into it, I do not know. But we had agreed that I was not going to give the notebook to them.
So that was your agreement, and as far as you know, they didn't copy any part of it.
ndivyo.
The witness, yes.
All right, I see the time. I've got probably about an hour, I would have thought.
Now, the idea was to finish today, including Mr.
I hadn't taken into account other witnesses being brought in and arguments. We lost the best part of an hour. So otherwise I would have concluded by lunchtime. But that's the difference.
Can you still finish today in good time for Mr. Catwan Keegan?
I understand Mr. Catwan, Mr. Brisbane requires an hour. What I could ask for as an indulgence, and in order to expedite matters in the sense of finishing this witness, is if we sat at 2, that doesn't mean we'd necessarily have to sit till 4. It'd be a great incentive to us all, but it would mean that I think both objectives of both defence teams could be met.
Mr. Steinberg, so far do you see the need to re-examine?
Just on one issue, Your Honours, approximately 5 minutes, I would imagine.
Mr. Hooper, if we started at 2, we'll be on a clear understanding that you will have to wrap it up, come what may, in 1 hour.
I understand. And in time for Ms. Busman to have her hour.
All right. We will adjourn and come back at 2.
Thank you, Honour. Thank you. And the witness will know it's 2 o'clock. Yeah.
I assume Ms. Tumai would have told him, but then, just to be sure. Yes, witness, we will be rising, but we will come back today 30 minutes earlier than normal. And Ms. Tumai will tell you when you need to be back in court. But we will not be taking 1.5 hours as we've done before, but 1 hour only for lunch break. The court will rise now.
All rise.